All right, everyone, it's time to call the cops. The Leafs come out of New Jersey with flat-out robbery following a 2-1 overtime win. This is the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf Centric podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti, and usually it is Mike DeStefano joining me, but he is unable to make it tonight, so we're calling up another gentleman from the minors. We have Austin Owens joining me tonight. Austin, thank you very much for joining me.
No worries, man. Just a little call from the bullpen, fill in, just try and do my best. That's all we can do. Pucks in deep, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And just to let everybody know that today's episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, if you place some money on the Leafs in this game on FanDuel, you might have been sweating it out. You're probably sweating it out at the first period when the team had exactly uno shot on goal. One. You were probably sweating it out when you saw every single advanced stat metric saying the Leafs had zero business. And I literally mean zero business being in that game after the first period. I know some people, when they look at the advanced stats, this is one of those games where it's just like advanced stats mean absolutely nothing because of the result, right? After that first period, the New Jersey Devils had a 97% expected goal share in the first period. 97%.
It's pretty good.
It is pretty good. I'll give also another shout out to Arun, who covers Leafs as well. Anthony Stolarz in that first period saved 2.28 expected goals during the first period when the Leafs were outshot 15-1. And somehow we are not talking about a Leafs loss. We are talking about a Leafs win, a 2-1 win in overtime, thanks to Austin Matthews, the captain, finding a way to beat Jacob Markstrom in overtime. And yeah, this is just one of those games where not pretty at all. Kind of hilarious. I'm not going to lie, because watching this game, I'm like, they look so awful. They look so bad. And it's going to be hilarious if considering how close this was when the Leafs pulled this out.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you talked about it, one shot after the first period. I think when you go back into the room at that point, it's just, you're kind of in survival mode trying to get to the intermission. Stolarz just standing on his head. And then you get into the room and you go, okay, well, this is one of those ones that it's not going to be pretty, but we got to find a way. And, if it wasn't for Stolarz, that game is, 4-5-6-0. There was some, mad scrambles in front. There was a couple, it was crazy. There's a couple mad dashes to the net, a couple of ones where he's just trying to fight through traffic to pick the puck up. And yeah, at the end of the day, the Leafs are, very lucky to come out with a point, but, you take 2 points, but all credit to Stolarz. He's been unbelievable all year. And this is just another example of, what a great move it was to have, Brad Treliving bring him into the fold and how much it's paid off for them in the long run.
We talked about this on yesterday's show, that this was a homecoming game for Anthony Stolarz. He said he had about 40 friends and family. So I have a theory. Leafs decided, hey, you're going to have a bunch of people watching you in this game. Let's let you be the star. But this, not how they would have drawn it up, but like if there was any chance, like the Leafs just wanted to make their goaltender look absolutely stellar in this game and give him the night, just a serenading night in front of the hometown audience.
Just the way we drew it up there, Stoley. Way to go, buddy. It's a little bit of the Uno reverse card, it feels like, because, we always hear about guys coming to Toronto. They have to buy out, they spend a whole game check on family and friends coming to the game, and then they end up having a night, and it's just the other way around. It's kind of nice to be on the end of that this time for Stolarz.
Yeah, that is a truth. A lot of truth to that, because I mean, Anthony Stolarz this season has proven to be, an exceptional goaltender. He's been in a bit of a timeshare with Joseph Woll. People are wondering, can he sustain this production throughout the year? At the same time, you heard Sheldon Keefe after the game pretty much give full out cookies to the opposing goalie, which to me feels like a common theme that we used to see a lot during the Sheldon Keefe era in Toronto. Full out control the game, but then when it came down to it, the other team just had the better goalie.
I don't remember who the tweet was at the beginning, but somebody on Twitter said the exact same thing, is it's nice to be on the other side of Sheldon Keefe's team, just completely dominating play and getting goaled. So I don't know what it is about him. His team was absolutely buzzing out of the gates. It's not for a lack of trying. They had some unbelievable chances. Just an unbelievable effort by the Leafs starter in that night. I mean, if there's a lot of steak dinners being thrown his way over the next week, I'd imagine.
I'm going to read out two quotes from Sheldon Keefe after the game. The first one being, best goaltending in the league on the other side of the ice. In a way, that kind of felt like a bit of an undercut on the Leafs there, because how many times could he have said that they had the best goaltending in the league? So maybe he's just like, oh, they finally got goaltending. The other one here is, I thought that was the best game we've played all season. I'm leaving here feeling good about our team tonight. That was Sheldon Keefe after the game. That sounds more like the Sheldon Keefe we know.
They learned a lot of lessons tonight, that's for sure.
Yeah, they learned a lot of lessons. Was there good handshakes after the game too, Sheldon? Was there good handshakes? Look, that if you play that game 10 times over, I'm thinking that doesn't happen that often. I don't think a Leafs win comes out, right? You can look at the deserve. You can look at every single metric.
I was going to say the deserve a win meter must just be an absolute bloodbath tonight.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like the it's just going way far.
It goes right past the threshold. It's just broken.
I'm actually looking it up right now. So the deserve. It's bad. The deserve to win meter, 81.8%, tops out at about 82%. It's weird. It kind of like fluctuates up and down. The Leafs had a 17.6% deserve to win meter tonight. So think that if you play that game 1,000 times, the Leafs win about 17% of those. So
we don't have a great time, a majority of it.
Yeah, but they did find a way to get the win. So let's we'll dive a little deeper onto how the Leafs somehow figure out a way to win this game. We'll give our 3 stars, maybe 3 stars of the game, and we'll also discuss kind of the addition of Max Domi, what that did to the lineup. Is this kind of where we expect things to go down with these guys coming back? Is this the lineup we're going to expect to see? And a few other notes around the NHL. This is Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL, NHL, and will be all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti here. Joining me is my good buddy Austin Owens, who is helping me with Mike unable to record tonight. And man, I know I'm gonna have to figure out a way to channel a little bit of Mike tonight, because Mike will. I did bring up a lot of the stats that Mike would have brought up tonight. So Mike and I like to cheat when we do these 3 stars of the game. Sometimes we'll pick multiple players. Sometimes we'll do a line. Sometimes
So it's
we'll say
it's the 6 stars of the night, not
or we'll say the penalty kill deserves the 3rd star. It ain't your normal traditional 3 stars of the game. Now, I'm having a really hard time saying this game deserves a 3 stars after this one.
It deserves 4.
It really only deserves 1.
Yeah.
Like Anthony's, like if you play that game again, if Anthony Stolarz doesn't somehow channel his inner, you can name any goaltender throughout the history of the league. Like Anthony Stolarz gave that type of performance that I can't remember the last time I saw a Leafs goaltender bail out a team like bail out the Leafs like this. Like, yeah, we've seen good goaltending performances. This team looked like they couldn't play hockey for a good 30 minutes. You know what Craig Berube had to say after the game, just to give you an idea of how the coach felt about this performance? We generated more scoring chances shorthanded than we did 5-on-5 and on the power play. Yep. Because the goal that tied it all up did come shorthanded, in case people forgot about that.
It's a good power killer right there.
Like Connor Dewar and Pontus Holmberg, the last 2 players I would have expected to come out and score a goal when the Leafs needed it. So that's why, yeah, I could give it to those 2 guys a star. I could give Austin Matthews a star for that goal. But let's be honest, the guy who did it from start to finish was Anthony Stolarz, because if it wasn't for that save he had in overtime, Austin Matthews doesn't get sprung on that breakaway. I will give Austin Matthews a lot of credit, because that was a wicked overtime goal. Don't know how he did it.
Yeah, unbelievable. I was thinking about this before I hopped on. It's like, I think the only guy that could usually has pulled something off like that is probably Connor McDavid. He's really good at getting his hands in tight and just lifting it right under the bar from in close. I mean, Mike Johnson talked about it on the broadcast, just rolling puck, guy all over his back. Like that's a world-class goal scorer's goal right there. But you're right. It's a save at one end and a goal at the other that seals the game. And if Stolarz doesn't come up with that save like he did, 20, 30 times earlier in the game, that, in a key junction, the Leafs we're not talking about a point, let alone 2 points. So it's got to be him.
Yeah, he steals a point. No, I don't even know if we can say steal. He gets them a point. He steals them 2.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I it's hard to kind of nail it down, but I'd say that's about right.
Yeah, and so when you look at, and look, I mean, you brought up Connor McDavid literally like 10, 15 minutes after Austin Matthews scores that goal. Connor McDavid had almost like a ridiculous, similarly ridiculous goal against Lightning. So it's kind of funny that you brought up his name on that. But I'm going to give a few more stats just to really highlight how awesome Anthony Stolarz was in this game. The expected goals for the Devils in all situations, I'm taking like power play, shorthanded, 5-on-5, 4.53. What did the Leafs have? 1.85. That is ridiculous when you look at those numbers. Like it's just like, I've been very much on the Joseph Wold train ever since he's come back, ever since he's had this really good run of his. But like that Anthony Stolarz game, yeah, I think they'll still continue to do a bit of that rotation. And honestly, if I'm Anthony Stolarz, I probably want to get a little bit of a break after that game. Or he may just even want to go right back into it. Like this could be one of those performances that Craig Berube goes to Joseph Wold and be like, we got to give Anthony another start here, because like just to reward him for what he did. Like, would you be surprised if they broke up the rotation for that one game just to kind of give Stolarz a bit of a, hey, you played so well, here's another start for you?
I don't think starting him in back-to-back games is a terrible idea, as long as you've got a day of rest or 2 in between. Obviously, You're not starting either of these pair on back-to-backs, especially with Wall's injury history. But I mean, just top to bottom, like the Leafs are in a really good spot for goaltending. I think the fact that we're talking about, should we start Stolarz for 2 straight games or should we filter in Wall? Like, we've never had a problem that great before, right? It's usually, hey, is Freddie Anderson going to play 60 some odd games, 65 games? Is, X, Y, or Z going to have to stand on their head or fill in for them for a prolonged period? Jack Campbell, when he was on his heater, like, just top to bottom, this organization, Artur Akhtiamov had another win today. Dennis Hildeby's playing really well in the A. You've got Pesca coming up the pipeline. Like, just a lot of riches, and just watching all these goaltenders is such a treat for the Leafs and the Marlies. It's nothing we've really seen before. And I think, maybe if, a certain trade to Boston goes differently, we could have had a nice little goalie in here, but we'll take it. We'll take what we can get at this point, because Stolarz is putting on a show, and Wool, he had a bit of a tough start when he came back from that injury off the start of the season, but they've both been outstanding every night in the crease.
Yeah, they have been, and it's been, I think, again, it's been talked about quite a bit, but maybe I don't think people truly understand how crucial this stretch has been for this Leafs goaltending, because the Leafs haven't had goaltending this consistent. They've had stretches where the goaltending has been good.
Yeah.
But it's not just that it's been good. It's been elite, right? Like, we just had the other coach say best goaltending on the other side of the ice.
You can have, I think the most important thing is you can have a goalie that's on a heater, and we've seen it every year. There's 1 or 2 guys that just come out of nowhere, and it's, some are sustainable, some are not. I think the biggest thing for a goaltender is defensively, when things break down, you just need a guy back there that he doesn't need to save everything. We're not expecting that, but a guy that can just be steady back there and make that save that gives your D confidence that, they're going to make the right play the next time, and they're going to bounce back because they know that guy's got them.
Yeah. And I'll say this, another thing that really, I think, played a factor in this win too. The Leafs went 0 for 4, like the Devils went 0 for 4 on the power play. So the penalty kill, once again, a really good night. And there was some tiki-tack calls. Like, I know the Tanev one, some people weren't happy with. Like, that's just when a guy gets clipped in the face, they're going to call it, even if it didn't look like a lot. There was like that Morgan Rally tripping call. To me, didn't look like a whole lot. But if this team is going to take penalties, they gotta have that penalty kill show up, and they did tonight. So I think that's another, I guess, maybe positive that you can take from this game, is the penalty kill had another good one.
Not quite a star, but good job.
You're still taking too many penalties.
You get at least 2 crisp thumbs up.
Yeah, at least you didn't allow it to be the reason why you lost this game.
Yes.
One other note I wanted to bring up. So the Leafs were 14th in the league, or they are 14th in the league in shots on goal. They're averaging about 29.1 per game. This is the lowest shot total they had of the season, with 12. And there's been a lot of talk about their play at 5-on-5, how they're not generating a lot of offense. And we've heard constantly Craig Berube talk about, we got to get more shots on goal. Don't be cute. North-south. Is this a case more so of a bit of a, I guess the best way to put it is like an adjustment for this team to try to generate more offense, or is it just some of these players are just not capable of generating that offense?
I think there's players up and down the lineup that are capable of producing and, playing within the system. I think obviously secondary scoring has been a bit of an issue this season, and that's something that's going to have to either, somebody's going to have to show up like Bobby McMann did last year, or you're going to have to address it through trade. But I think part of it's just growing pains going, from a system with Sheldon Keefe that they played, from mid 2019 up until last season, where, some nights it's not going to come easy, and you got to find a way to, get pucks on net and just grind out goals. And I think that's tough for a team. It also goes back to, I think, the goaltending, where, it was kind of the opposite for this team, in recent years, where it was the goaltending wasn't as good, so we had to outscore our problems. Whereas on the inverse, it's, the goaltending's been extremely solid, but that also means, more frozen pucks in this contest. If the faceoffs aren't going as well, you're not producing as much going the other way. Guys are caught in their defensive zone. Then you're forced to have, the mid six, bottom six play more offensive zone shifts. They're not as good at cycling maybe. So, and I also think, not to get too rambly, but, Max Pacioretty still finding his way back. Max Domi still finding his way back. I think it'll take a little bit to get their legs back under them, because practice reps are obviously a lot different than game reps. So maybe in, a couple games time, maybe a week, you'll see them kind of back to full speed, and these things will get a little better. But for what it was, obviously it wasn't good enough tonight. Craig Berube wasn't going to be happy with it, but I think, one game where you can kind of battle through it and, nothing was really going their way and they still find a way to get it done. I think that's a positive in a sense that they can take away from this.
Yeah. And you brought up Domi, you brought up Pacioretty, the guys that are getting themselves back on track. Let's take a break here. Let's discuss those additions, and we're expecting a few more potential additions to the lineup as guys start to get healthy, and kind of where the Leafs lineup sits right now. It's a bit of a puzzle that this coach staff has gone through. So let's go through some of that here on the other side, here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's Locked On Leafs podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money, whether it's hockey, football, or any other of your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can win up to 200 times your money on PrizePicks. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select players' projections are discounted up to 25%. This week on PrizePicks, you could have looked at Austin Matthews scoring, Anthony Stolarz to get the win. There's a lot of potential options there and also ways to cash out fast. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly at PrizePicks. Run your game. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti also having Austin Owens join me today on the podcast. A little slip of the lip there, but we got ourselves back on track.
We're gonna need to clean it up here, pal.
Yeah, I got to clean it up here. I don't want to be this. That was like the Leafs in the first period. We're gonna catch things.
No excuses. Play like a champion.
Yeah, exactly. So we had another forward come back to the fold after we literally looked like we couldn't find enough healthy NHL players to play. Max Domi was back, and not surprisingly, he was put onto the third line with Fraser Minten and Steven Lorentz. Two players are having half-decent seasons, but you're putting Max Domi with two players that don't exactly, again, we're talking about this team's desire to drive more offense and honestly just get more shots on goal and things like that. You're playing with two players that don't exactly do it. And coming into the game, Craig Berube basically said Domi's got to get to the net more. He's got to shoot and things like that. Do you think when you look at the lineup, and here, actually, maybe I can pull it up here. This was the starting lineup that the Leafs had tweeted out, just so give people a bit of that visual. So you had Pacioretty again with Matthews and Marner. You had Nyes with Tavares and Nylander, Lorentz with Minten and Domi, and of course the fourth line of Holmberg, Dewar, and Reeves. To me, when I look at this lineup now, with Bobby McMann pushing to come back, hopefully, I don't know. I think he might be eligible, might be able to come back against the Ducks on Thursday, maybe at worst later in the week. We're still waiting to hear official word on that. When I look at this lineup, that third line screams pretty decent in terms of being able to play a checking role, defensively sound. But it certainly does look like it's missing that offensive punch.
Yeah, I think Steven Lorentz is, upgraded into that spot just to give it a little bit more of a grinding element to it, as a shutdown element. Obviously, Fraser Minten's a little green. He's, handful of games into his career. Domi's a skill guy, but he's, kind of hit or miss in the defensive zone. So, a bit of an experiment. I mean, when McMann gets back, these lines are going to be jumbled again. You'll see the blender get pulled out. But for what it was, I mean, this is a good time of the year, I think, with the Leafs, especially in the position they are, to try some stuff like this out. You kind of know what you've got in the system. You got to see Nikita Grabenkin play. You've got to see Minton in an extended role. Holmberg, Dewar, Reeves just got back. You've gotten to see all these guys with all these injuries. It's unfortunate that the Leafs have been down this many bodies, but at least they kind of know what they have. And, Craig Berube coming into this team fresh kind of has a better idea past just the preseason and, what he got to see there of what these guys can do against, the real deal competition.
So let's say Bobby McMann does come back in the next game.
Yeah.
Where, if you're looking at this lineup, do you slot him?
Oh, that's a good question. I honestly kind of like what the Leafs were doing earlier in the year where Pacioretty was playing lower down the lineup. Like I think he made some good defensive plays, but I don't know how much you're playing Ryan Reeves when everyone's healthy. I think that fourth line is going to look a lot different. But I mean, McMahon's got to slide somewhere into that second or third line, the top 9 for sure. I think in a perfect world, I'd like to see more of Matthews, Nyes, and Nylander together. I do like the idea of Marner splitting up just because he had that tear when Austin was out. Just trying to see what he can do with JT and, maybe a McMann, maybe you bump Domi up if, Minton's the guy you want to play down the middle for a bit. There's a lot of things you can do. And again, I think that's a good problem to have, obviously. It's just, kind of figuring out where guys slot in. I think if McMann can score some more goals and produce a little bit of a higher clip, I think he should be playing in that top 9, maybe even the top 6, on that second line. I think there's a place for him. The way he's heavy on the puck and the way he can finish when he's going. But it's a good problem to have for Berube now that you have everybody coming back. Just kind of filtering in guys where you think they fit.
Yeah, I do think it is a good problem to have. It's also a much needed solution. I'm not saying Bobby McMahon's going to cure everything, but I think it just means you can have a more balanced lineup. I do like your idea of having Nyes with Matthews, and I think you try that Nyes, Matthews, Nylander trio again, because then you can do that McMann, Tavares, Marner trio that was working so well.
And
when
you
Matthews was
guys that just work really well on the side and end boards, and then Marner is just unbelievable with the puck, one of the best in the league.
And Bobby McMann does exactly what Craig Berube wants, goes to the net and finds good opportunities there. Because of what that allows too, I think you can slide Pacioretty down to that third line where you can have him with Minton and Domi. He's a guy that can shoot. He's also brings that physicality. That hit on Jack Hughes. I was at first I was concerned that he might have killed Jack Hughes with just like it looked worse at the initial angle.
Yeah, it's 5 games.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I mean, I think it's funny because Pacioretty also said like he's bringing that more and he's got a little more of appreciation of that physical play, which it's funny. I don't think if you looked at Max Pacioretty, 5-6 years ago, you'd expect him to be in this sort of role. But I do think that the important thing here is, and Mike will say this too, he'll probably say it at the top, screaming at the top of his lungs, I'm kind of done with Ryan Reeves for a little bit.
Yep.
Just because you can run a fourth line with Dewar, Holmberg, and Lorentz. That's a tough fourth line to go up against. You got the speed of Dewar. Holmberg is, a guy that hounds the puck, and Lorentz is just kind of a solid all-around player. Yeah. And Lorentz, a good fourth liner, miscasted as a third liner because I'd like to see a little more offense being driven from the third line. Mm-hmm. And that's where, that's where I think Domi can do it. They need someone that can provide more offense. Now, the other option, and I know some people might not like this potential, what I'm about to throw here. Okay, you put Lorentz to the fourth line. I'm just throwing it out here. And maybe you consider Nyes or McMann in that third line role. I know the idea of playing Matthew Nyes third line might really piss some people off, the Matthew Nyes fan, because the one thing you can also do is you can put Pacioretty back with Tavares, because that was also another duo that worked really well. if you are insistent on Keefe, I just don't know if Pacioretty complements Matthews the way I think they expected. And I think you either going to have to put Nyes with Matthews or maybe you put McMann there. Like it all depends on where Marner sits. I just kind of think like I'm surprised that Berube has kept Matthews and Marner together this long, just because I personally think it's looked better. I know that in the Nashville game, they came back and it was an instant boost, but it's also Nashville. They're not a good team. Now you played against more quality opponents, namely Washington. I'll give Pittsburgh their cookies that, they're a bit of a better goal, although they got pumped by Colorado tonight. But like, you're playing against higher quality competition, and I just don't think the Matthews Marner duel is something I want to see long term. I think you gotta consider doing the split again. It's just a matter of how do you fit the puzzle, and I think there's easy solutions. It's just, can the chemistry get back to it? But like, I'm in no way gonna have William Nylander playing lower in the lineup because he leads your team in goals. Pacioretty, to me, I just think top line might be too much for him, especially because of how much that line plays too, right? Now maybe you can try some different combinations, but I just think you gotta be a bit. I think you just gotta be a bit smarter with how you deploy this lineup now that you're getting more healthy bodies back.
Yeah, I think I don't know. In a perfect world, I feel like Pacioretty probably is the third line guy. I like the idea of having him, the way he's physical on the puck and the way he battles for loose pucks. I like the idea of having him with Domi. And if Domi is not going to facilitate as much and be more of a passer, facilitate as a passer more than a shooter is what I mean to say. And Pacioretty can, be on the opposite end of that and finish off. And, I don't think we're looking at, 20 goals this year, but if Pacioretty can chip in, 10 plus, I think it's a very good year for him considering everything that's happened. And I think Domi being a pass first guy now and, just kind of flat out refusing to shoot at certain points of the year, maybe that's what works. And then maybe you fit a Bobby McMann. And I think, again, this is a situation where you need to look at a center down the road. I think Domi's best utilized on the wing. And I think a lot of this puzzle becomes easier to sort. I don't know what the name is. I know there's been a lot floated, Brock Nelson's one that you've heard. There's a couple other names, but I think it becomes a lot simpler whenever a trade's made, probably closer to the deadline when they sort that situation out.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I know we haven't talked a lot about the blue line. Jake McCabe missed his 5th straight game. We went from it being not a serious thing to now he's out 5 straight games. He remains
on his way to Germany now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we preparing for the flight to Germany anytime soon for Jake McCabe? Because I'm I don't know. It just feels like day to day doesn't mean the same thing for the Leafs that it does for any other team. Day to day means likely gonna be 1 or 2 games. This is now 5 straight. So hopefully we get him back soon.
If we're assuming it's a concussion, I completely get it, though. It's one of the toughest injuries to kind of forecast. It goes from literally day to day to just try and figure out, how he's feeling, what the symptoms are. So hopefully he's back in the lineup soon. That was a tough shot he took in the back of the head. Just an unfortunate situation because the Leafs were just starting to get healthy again, and then they take a hit to the blue line. So, I mean, I think Philip Myers has done a pretty good job in his place. So, and just the guys they brought in, Simone Benoit looked like he had a pretty good game tonight. The defense, I don't think, was the main issue, like the defenders themselves. I think it was more of a systematic problem and breakdown when it came to just giving up scoring chances. But, the guys are kind of filling in their roles where they're needed, which is good to see.
Yeah, it is good that a guy like Philip Myers I know he didn't exactly look too great on the opening goal by New Jersey, but I think that they've at least provided the Leafs with an opportunity to say, okay, like Jake McCabe, take your time because we're not. It's not like the Leafs have been allowing a crazy amount of goals against with Jake McCabe out, but we also know that they are better when Jake McCabe is playing. So hopefully we see a positive result soon. I think that we'll call it for tonight, and we'll see how things kind of shape up with the Leafs. On the next show, we'll preview or get ourselves kind of getting closer to that game against Anaheim, who have Jacob Trouba in their lineup. So we'll kind of look into how those things are going out there, and other potential lineup notes we're going to be looking for with the Leafs. I doubt they're going to be practicing coming off a road game, but we'll see if there's any potential updates on a guy like Jake McCabe and Bobby McMann. Here, we'll do that next on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, and follow us on X at Locked On Leafs, and you can follow myself at D_Morassutti, and you can follow Austin at _Austin Owens. Until next time, keep locked right here on Locked On Leafs.